Bugby Elementary School in Connecticut inviting parents to a seminar on how to talk to their children about gender and sexuality. But are kids too young for such topics? Director of Outreach for Parents Defending Education, Erika Sanzi, joins me now to discuss. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, no problem. So we're going to get to this first. I want to talk about the elementary school promoting the Gender 101 presentation. It says the assumption that sex equals gender is millennia old, but if you look at the history of the trans community as well as the existence of intersex people throughout history, this myth starts to shed its authority. What is your reaction and your thoughts as far as, the questions that this might raise for you coming from the school?
So I think that there's a few different questions. I think, first of all, we can have a conversation about whether or not the schools have a role to play in speaking to elementary school parents about the gender and sexuality of their children. I would probably argue that they do not, but certainly if it was a balanced presentation that helped parents understand gender dysphoria and, perhaps brought in the perspectives of a variety of people, we could at least have a debate about, where is the line and what is appropriate. The problem with this is that this presentation in particular was completely baked in with trans activist ideology. So there wasn't even any room for the person who believes that a child's biological sex has any connection to their gender.
And you talked about a balanced presentation. Was there ever talk or anything brought up about perhaps a more conservative side giving their thoughts on this?
Again, not that I'm aware of. This was a newsletter that went home to families. I think that it has, elementary schools will send out newsletters that have lots of announcements of upcoming events. One of the upcoming events was this Gender 101 seminar or workshop, I think it was. And it wasn't mandatory, but there is a power dynamic in place when you are inviting and encouraging parents to attend. And this sort of had that sense of, if we can get the parents to buy in to this one particular ideology, then perhaps they'll be able to, sort of push it onto their children. So again, it just felt over the line, not only in terms of why are you talking about this subject with parents of very young children, but also this is an activist who specializes in trans, non-binary, and intersex people. So the words boy and girl and female and male weren't even anywhere in the presentation.
And then that gets me to my next point. The Bugby School's principal statement, they released a statement saying this was not for students or children, nor were they present. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to be honest, I think that's kind of a cop-out because they say that they weren't present. They say that this was not intended for them to hear at that time, but ultimately it is because they want the parents to talk to their kids about it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I certainly think that we'd be having a different conversation. If this was a mandatory presentation for elementary children, I do think that would be different than in an optional workshop for parents. So I do think that's different. But to your point, I also feel like it feels a little bit like a way to begin getting that message to children by way of their parents. And so if they could get a parent who perhaps doesn't really know much about this topic at all, and then suddenly feels that what's being presented to them by this group is the truth, because it was presented as the truth, right? It was presented that a child's biological sex has nothing to do with their gender. And it feels over the line. And again, there was it wasn't like, okay, next we're going to have a workshop, by biologists who actually have a completely different view of this and who believe that, that male and female
right.
is very, very linked between biology and gender, and it begins in the womb, and let's talk about that. But unfortunately, again, this just felt like sort of trans activism targeted at parents of young children and then potentially at the children themselves if the person doing the presentation gets what they want.
Right. I completely understand. Thank you so much, Erika Sanzi, for being with us and for giving us your take on this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.